Welcome into the latest episode. This is a Champions League edition of Betting the Pitch. I'm your host, the real underscore G Warner on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and on YouTube. And this is Monday, March 4th, late night with the real underscore G Warner, as always, per usual. But we're going to try to find some winners. Had an undefeated Champions League last week. Going to try to, or last time it occurred, I think 2 weeks ago. Going to try to keep that going. We're going to go through all of the remaining, I guess, round of 16 knockouts for Champions League. Only 4 will be contested this week, but going to try to get an idea of kind of what to expect coming forward and potentially just put some markers down, get some ideas on what we want to do with lines coming up shortly. There's very little quoting lines courtesy of BetOnline. There's a link in the promo code and a promo code in the podcast description on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or on YouTube. If you're not a member there at BetOnline or Sportsbetting.ag, there's some great bonuses going on at both those places. So check in on that. But I'll start. It's hard to say where the money is because the money is everywhere in Champions League, and that's why everyone wants to play in it. But we'll start with Bayern München, and they are hosting Lazio Roma. Currently, Bayern München a goal and a half favorite, and actually, because this is a Tuesday match, recording this Monday night in Dallas, Texas. Because this is the Tuesday match, we do have some 2 advanced numbers on both of these matches, but unfortunately, I don't see anything else for the rest. So unfortunately, you might have to wait till the next episode next Tuesday when we discuss, I guess, or next Monday night, most likely, when we discuss what's happening in the next or the last to close up the Champions League round. Anyway, enough of that chat. Let's get into it. So Bayern Munich currently a goal and a half favorite with all the juice. Over under is 3, juiced more to over. We haven't seen one. Yes, we actually have seen 1 3/4. Excuse me. So started tracking this. Lazio were actually pretty expensive goal and a half favorite. That's been drifting or sinking, and there's a lot of money's been coming in on Bayern Munich to the point where that side had climbed all the way to 1 3/4. It's back to 1.5, but you're getting plus 105 right now at BetOnline. So I don't necessarily think that that's going to stick around for too long. Would expect potentially Bayern Munich to close a goal and 3/4 favorite, maybe even 2 goals. Now here's the dilemma, or here's the rub. So Lazio with a 1-0 victory at home in the first leg. That was good for my Lazio play. I was going to play under it, and I didn't do it. I'm very sad I didn't. But Lazio they basically defended the whole match, had one counterattack in the second half specifically. They had more than one total, but one that worked out pretty well. Tried to take a shot on goal, and Dio Upamecano with one of his patented trademark red cards. Just I think studs on the leg or ankle or something like that of the shooter. Got a penalty that was rolled in by Ciro Immobile, and then Lazio held on for dear life. Now, Lazio since then have been playing horribly. They had a really tough, were very upset about playing an early, I think, Sunday morning fixture, maybe Saturday morning fixture at Bologna, lost that, then played Friday this week, took a red card, unfortunately, and lost 1-0 to Milan at home as a home underdog, which is saying something, but that kind of reflects how poorly Lazio have played. What I've kind of found in a lot of these competitions is domestic league play really has nothing to do with how teams perform in Champions League. See Dortmund, Borussia as an example. Lazio are trying to do that same sort of thing. I'm not sure that I expect that to happen, but they get a Bayern Munich side that can't win any matches. I mean, we're up 2-1. I think fell behind on a wonder goal by Christian Gunther from Sports Club Freiburg on the road and tough place to play, of course. But Freiburg have literally been running on fumes, losing to almost everybody and taking leads in all their matches and losing all of them. I guess I should take a little bit of note to that. But Bayern were able to get 2 goals to take a lead 2-1, really off of, I think, Freiburg just being gassed, even at home, right in their crowd. But then a late throw-in was not dealt with, and it was a pretty good goal. So I guess they gave up 2 pretty good low percentage, low XG, pretty awesome finishes for both the goals. But like a non-goal scorer, just basically an energy forward scored, and Lucas Hola for Freiburg as well. So there's 2-2, and now Bayern are going to play with all the pressure in the world. Yes, they're at home. It's a very different venue, and they play much better at home, but it just hasn't really gone well for Bayern all season. I mean, Leverkusen have been awesome, so Bayern München probably would be winning the Meisterschale with this team and this performance last year, but it's not last year, unfortunately. And Xavi Alonso is gonna. I think I'm not sure that they're ever gonna lose. We'll see. Maybe in Europa League would probably be the best chance, but it just seems to me like this price really. I mean, yes, it does make sense to want to be against Lazio considering how much they've struggled recently. But I swear, Bayern Munich have done nothing to show that they deserve to lay this type of price. So Lazio with a 1-0 aggregate lead, away goals don't matter. They're probably going to go with Maurizio Sarri, former Juventus, former Chelsea Football Club manager. I mean, they're going to be as defensive as possible. They basically were trying to do anything they could not to let Milan score in a home game in Serie A where they're like mid-table right now, needing wins. So I expect the same sort of thing, especially with a lead going to the Bavarian capital in southern Germany. So my guess here for how this game plays out is Bayern are going to be aggressive on the front foot attacking as they were in Roma just a couple weeks ago. And Lazio are going to let them do that and try to really just muck up everything. And the great part about this is if Lazio, because they have a 1-0 aggregate lead, if they fall behind, and it becomes 1-1 on aggregate, I think Lazio still play the same way. They want to make this a counterattacking game, take one of the few chances they can make, whether it's Ciro Immobile starting or Tati Castellanos, who I think was a little banged up in the match on Friday. But ultimately, Lazio don't have a lot of answers. They're going to try to defend in packs, and they're going to try to make Bayern München try to break them down. Now, Bayern are used to this for years and years and years, but they've been with very aggressive and different managers than Thomas Tuchel, who like literally after the game last weekend just said, well, why'd you start so bad? Well, we had a terrible 30 minutes, which most managers, I think, because he's already lost his job, it ends the end of the season. They've decided to part ways with him. So he can finally be honest. He's like, listen, we had 30 minutes that we were terrible. And then we started to actually do the things we trained and we got better. Shocking. And honestly, not such a big surprise either, just based on how Bayern have really struggled this year. I think from a Bayern perspective, they're going to try to dominate the ball. They will. They're going to try to create chances in that way. I don't know if Serge Gnabry, they were talking about him potentially returning, which has been a big injury miss for Bayern Munich, but they are so used to having so much depth. The problem is Serge Gnabry is a goal scorer. You can't really say that about Leroy Sané. He's he's a sprinter that plays football or soccer, depending on where you're watching this. I know most of my audience is probably in America, so soccer, we'll say there. But I just feel like from a perspective on this matchup, Lazio, or what I don't like about fading Bayern is ultimately in domestic league matches or matches where you're trying to get points, like in the group stages of Champions League, you can't really lose a match because you get nothing better besides goal difference from losing 1-0 as opposed to 12-0. So, I mean, besides maybe the confidence that would happen in that scenario, or 1-0 versus 3-0 is probably a little bit more normal, even though 3-0 is a shellacking. I just feel like this is a different scenario where Lazio are really going to be playing the exact brand of football they want to play this whole match. There we go, saying football instead of soccer again. But I think Lazio, it's a very good chance that Lazio find a goal against Bayern because they concede them at will, it seems, or it's probably not willing at this point, but they give up at least a goal a match, it feels. And I feel like the late win against RB Leipzig for Bayern Munich, like that was a miraculous. Like the announcers were talking about how the manager would have to figure something out and how this is going to be. They look like they have nothing, and they didn't have anything. They just had one late, incredible like miss-hit pass from Choupo-Moting, and then a great finish from Harry Kane. That's going to be the number one, the main objective of Lazio is do not give Harry Kane chances, or try to keep his chances as low as possible. Get Harry Kane frustrated so he starts dropping further and further back towards his midfield to collect the ball, and then see if he can distribute because he's the ultimate goal scorer from Bayern Munich, and they don't have a lot around him. I'm now worried. I've talked myself into Serge Gnabry potentially being a huge threat, but he hasn't played in months, so I just don't see a lot of ways for Bayern Munchen to threaten Lazio. They're great on corners in the Bundesliga, but that's probably because they're always playing teams that are gassed because they've been playing defense for 95 minutes or do on a weekly basis against Bayern Munchen and don't do that against almost anybody else. So I just don't think this is a very good situation for Bayern. It's a perfect situation for Lazio. As for the total, I mean, if Bayern go down here, they're going to be throwing everything they can. But I just don't know that Thomas Tuchel is capable of all of a sudden like conceding his defense to go for offense. I guess it's not that hard for Bayern games to see a lot of goals, especially not in Munchen. But at this point, I feel like Lazio go into Munich and they are able to stay relatively tight here. So give me a goal and a half. Give me under 3. I like that too. A huge push on that 3. I can't imagine we're going to lose that. In terms of the total, it opened 3 minus 120, so very juiced. But we've only seen over money hitting really ever since it initially started looking like it's going to head towards 2 3/4. Feel pretty good about both these numbers, waiting as long as possible, seeing if Lazio climb to 1 3/4. So you lose only half a bet if they lose 2-0 or 3-1 or whatever the number would be. Certainly more value in waiting, especially because I expect the money to come in on the favorite and especially on Bayern Munchen at home. Because I don't think people really realize how bad Bayern Munchen have been this year. Certainly nowhere near their standards, but I think ultimately they're just not a very good team. Move next to Real Sociedad hosting PSG. And unfortunately, Real Sociedad, they have been stretched far too thin this year, suffered a ton of injuries, as has everyone across the major soccer leagues. But Real Sociedad getting back to Champions League, or maybe this is their first time. I don't think it was ever, but a first time in a long time. And unfortunately, they lost a lot of players to the AFCON and also to the Asian Cup. Probably should have thought about that, but I guess you weren't going to let Takefusa Kubo go somewhere else. So, but I'll get to the line here. So Real Sociedad, a pick 'em right now with more juice at home. Over under here is 2.5, juice a little bit more to over. Now PSG, they have a 2-0 aggregate lead. It was basically a very close game that Real Sociedad could have taken the lead in the first half if they had got a ball a little bit lower than the crossbar instead of hitting right on top of it. Mikel Merino, if I remember correctly, but then gave up a goal on a 10-man corner kick because their defender got hurt and then had to be off the pitch. And Takefusa Kubo, who just mentioned, who's a small Japanese player who literally incredibly creative, former Real Madrid, and I think Barcelona also has both of those on his CV. But he was then trying to defend like Kylian Mbappe on a back post header. I mean, it's amazing that's how it all broke down. But I think that's Real Sociedad being caught a little bit exposed, to say the least, maybe with their pants down. It's a reference that would probably be used in the U.S. But when you look at this number here and compare it to where aggregate 2-0 PSG stands, if Real Sociedad win this match by a single goal, they are eliminated. PSG are celebrating at the final whistle, and we all win our bet. So that's very interesting to me. It reminds me of the Rennes and Milan match in the Europa League second leg a couple weeks ago, where it was back and forth, and I think Rennes converted maybe 2, if not 3 penalties to win 3-2. But same scenario. It was 3-0 heading into that one, so it was even more lopsided. But I think Real Sociedad have a great chance. They look like they were in this to win this match. The last time they were playing, they played an early match Friday of, I guess, 2 weeks ago to then play Copa del Rey's second leg of their semifinal, which they lost on penalties. Brutal. But that was on Tuesday. Then they went and played the early match Saturday, lost at Sevilla. Unfortunately did not really show up very well, but they'd come off a heartbreaking loss in the Copa del Rey, and they'd not really played their best for that matchup. So I'm pretty interested in seeing what Real Sociedad puts out there. Imanol Alguacil, their manager, is awesome. It's not been a good year for him, and I think we've seen what happens to a team that's not expecting to play in so many competitions, and they just were so good in all of them. I mean, Copa del Rey semi, winning their Champions League group. And then, I mean, they've been in the European places, but they've basically been stretched so thin that they are really just leaking oil in a lot of different directions. So that might explain why this number is where it is, plus PSG winning 2-0. And I think the first leg, it was a 3/4 goal spread. So it, I guess, sort of fits a little bit, but I think Real Sociedad are worth it at pick'em, especially when you draw, you end up with a push as opposed to laying any sort of number. That's one I'm going to be probably pretty careful about making sure I don't lose. But in terms of where this number has gone, not very far. It's basically a backward since I've been tracking it at BetOnline. Real Sociedad slight favorite at Pick'em literally throughout. Total here 2.5. Juice a little bit more to over, just 4 cents difference between over and under. That has been juiced pretty heavily to under and has I guess seen some over money hit. I would expect that same sort of thing to happen. Champions League is very popular. People don't like to bet unders. I don't blame them. It literally is going to put me in an early grave. But until then, I'm thinking it'll be worth it and profitable to do that situation and try to make as many positive expected value bets as possible. But I'm pretty interested in both of these games. I think unders are a reasonable look as well. We saw PSG in a goalless draw at Monaco on Friday. Kylian Mbappe substituted very early because Ligue 1 is basically already clinched for Paris Saint-Germain. So this is their competition. This is what they're worried about. They're going to play their best here, which does worry me fading PSG at Pick'em. But it's on the road. The crowd, I fully expect it to be as dominant as possible. And PSG have really struggled in this round. They've had, of course, some incredible collapses in their Champions League history. And Real Sociedad, if they take the lead, you're in very good shape for your pick'em because PSG would have to equalize and then take their own lead. But ultimately, I feel like there's going to be some nerves that come into the PSG side. And a 2-0 result here gets you into extra time. You win your pick'em bet. You win the under 2.5. So I'm interested in both of those. And I think I forgot to mention to an ultimate best bet end of show for not following at the real_G Warner on Instagram or on YouTube. That's a good spot to get a minute version of this as opposed to probably what's going to be 40 today on Champions League, and when there's so few matches. But we also do like over an hour on weekends. So I guess it is what it is. You can pick your poison or pick what you'd enjoy more. I'll go over the two advanced numbers. I guess I should do that now. I'll do that at the end because I'll go through the other matches this week, and I'm going to pick an ultimate best bet from Tuesday and one from Wednesday as well. And since I haven't done that yet, it might be time for me to pick one here. So from Tuesday, I mean, I'm pretty interested in both of these, to say the least. I think I'm probably most concerned by under in the in the Bayern Munchen matchup, just because playing unders with Bayern is so scary. That's probably the best way to put it. But I think I'm very interested in Lazio getting that goal and a half, which I think climbs as well. And then, I mean, under 3 is still very interesting to me as well. Like Sociedad getting a pick 'em. I also don't see a real reason to jump in there right yet. So I'll probably wait on that. But I think for my ultimate best bet, the selection on Tuesday, which I'll then cut up to a reel where if you are following on the real_G Warner on Instagram or on YouTube, you'll see these little things come out. But I'll go Lazio getting a goal and a half from Bayern Munchen on the road as my best bet for Tuesday. So move to Wednesday, Real Madrid hosting RB Leipzig. Two very interesting matches this weekend from those two clubs. We also have Manchester City hosting FC Copenhagen. We'll start in the Spanish capital in Madrid in the Bernabeu. Leipzig, who looks like they'd opened a 1-goal underdog, still there. Juices come a little bit more on the Leipzig side, surprisingly. Over under is 3, juiced all the way to over. That looks like it has pretty much stayed about the same, and we are a couple of days from this match really taking place. But until then, we've got a decent idea, I think, of where this number will go, which to me doesn't seem like it's moving very far. I feel like there's always Real Madrid money coming in all the time. There wasn't as much on their trip to Valencia this weekend, which they should have won if not for Jesus Gil Manzano, who will probably be on one of these matches that are not involving a Spanish team. And that'll be a very interesting experience. Hope he's not on a place I have an under, but considering I like unders in Champions League over and over again, it's probably a really bad potential combination. But we'll go with, okay, so I'll jump into the first leg. Real Madrid fell behind 1-0, and the goals ruled out for contact on a keeper from an offside player. Seemed pretty cut and dry to me. Marco Rose, the manager for Leipzig, was losing his mind. Even in the post-game press conference, he was asked about it and said he still didn't have an explanation on why the goal was ruled out. I don't know how that's possible, because usually when a toa is overturned, they will probably explain it. But maybe he's being dramatic. I'm not sure. Anyway, Real Madrid eventually got a goal and took a 1-0 advantage from Germany back home to Madrid. I think from just a general perspective, Leipzig have not been very good this year, but they had a really good win this weekend, and Marco Rosa played incredibly well, I guess, or the hand that he's dealt. Basically, VfL Bochum, a low budget side in the German Bundesliga. They've stayed up because they've been great at home, and at home they're a lot more aggressive. And what they did was they went all out trying to win a match against a Leipzig side who are very comfortable to counterattack. And that's literally what they're best at. And fell behind 1-0 on an awful mistake from Peter Kulashi, their like captain and longtime goalkeeper, who'd come back from injury and then looked like they were kind of alternating the backup goalkeeper who had played really well, Blazovic, I believe. But then it seems like they're giving the job back to Kulashi. And of course, within like a first few minutes of this match, he just blows a complete like a routine save right at him from a free kick and literally like fists it into his own goal. Not great. I don't know if that's enough to put some pressure on him that would make him perform worse against Real Madrid. Probably not, because he's been doing this a long time, and I think that's still the club or the keeper for his national team for Hungary, and they'll be playing the Euros, which I expect to be attending in Germany this summer. If you're there, please shout, and we can get ein Bier, zwei Bier, drei Bier, or however many numbers. I just can't speak in German very high. I know fünf is 5, so let's go to 5, even though those steins are huge and they fuck me up. Excuse my French. But Leipzig, so I really like them as a +1 underdog, because if they lose here, it's no big deal. But I expect that they will be going for this match, but I expect they'll do it in a little bit more conservative, moderate, pragmatic way. So Real Madrid basically play that same style, and that's what's made them so good in the Champions League, which still so good in Spain, and they're going to win La Liga this year, barring some incredible collapse. But they've won Champions Leagues despite having much farther or much worse teams. Here they have, and we're sure we're going to get a ton of Jude Bellingham because he got a red card for telling Jesus Gil Manzano, the La Liga referee, how bad he is. I think he called him a joke or a clown or something like that at the end. Awesome. Very nice. Jude, I like him more every day. It's really hard because he scores so many goals to just break my back, but like him a lot. I think Real Madrid are going to be the same type of Ancelotti style, which is pretty like conservative and really try to get his studs like Vinny Jr., who was awesome, I thought, this weekend, especially at Valencia, where people had called him really awful things previously that were all racial abuse and things. But he's going to try to get lost or really just try to find ways to get Vinny Jr. running at the Leipzig defense. That's a concern for me because Leipzig is essentially they're almost like a warehouse or a manufacturing facility of really young players and especially defenders that get really a lot of seasoning, and they're all these physical specimens, and then they become much better, like we've seen at Ibrahim Konate at Liverpool, and we were expecting to see Dayot Upamecano at Bayern Munchen. That's still been a work in progress, and I wonder if it's because they don't really preach defense at that club. But I think there's some concern there, but we're getting a full goal of insurance. That's important because a draw here when final whistles, people are celebrating Real Madrid playing that really annoying song, especially if you're betting against them or under or both. But I'm leaning like that for both options here. But ultimately, I think Real Madrid, something I've said all season, sticking to it. They've really not scored goals very efficiently. I mean, it's really hard to track Jude Bellingham, but I imagine that RB Leipzig has some idea that Marc Olza used to coach him at Borussia Dortmund before he moved to Leipzig after getting sacked there after leaving Borussia Mönchengladbach. I would expect that would be a pretty like modus operandi, like number one target, like Kane is for Bayern Munchen, for Lazio. I would expect Jude Bellingham to be the same for Real Madrid. And yes, you got to worry about him and Vinny Jr., but I think you use your back line to monitor Vinny Jr., and then you use the deep sitting central defensive midfielders like a Xaver Schlager or Chris Kampel just to really mark Jude Bellingham. They certainly aren't the physical specimens. I think Schlager far more than Kampel, or maybe Haidara, but it seemed to me that Leipzig rotated a lot this weekend and really didn't bring in their best players like Lois Openda, their star striker, until the second half, 60-something minutes, and then he scored a goal, and then they scored 3 more in like 3 minutes, it seemed. I think this is a pretty good situation for Leipzig. I don't love their chances to advance here, unfortunately, but I do think that they can make this a tough one, and I don't see a ton of goals here. I think Leipzig, the way they're going to play this game is they're going to play a 4-2-2-2, so they're going to stay right in the middle and try to force Real Madrid to go out on the outside, and then when Real Madrid pushes their fullbacks too far up, they try to strike on the counterattack. I don't know that Real Madrid will fall into those traps. I think Ancelotti has proven that he can, I don't know, decide things that are beneficial for his team, and he kind of morphs based on who he's facing, which is incredibly intelligent and should be something that everyone does. But I do think that there's some risk here that Real Madrid give up a goal, and then this one becomes a real stalemate, and then we get both under and the side to cover. Real Madrid potentially going into extra time and then having a real dogfight on their hands to avoid penalties and potentially going out to a German side that hasn't really done great, though to me they've put Manchester City on the ropes multiple times this season alone in the group stage. Moving into Manchester City, speaking of, they're 2.25 goal favorite to Copenhagen at home. A little bit more juice on Man City. Over under is 3.5, juice very heavily to under slash all the way to under. Might see 3.25, but again, overs, Champions League, those kind of run together. In terms of where this number has gone, it's been 2.25 since I've been watching it. And it was very juiced at the beginning. It's then got very not juiced, and then it's come back to kind of middle of the road. I expect we'll probably close at this 2.25, maybe 2.5, but don't think we're going to get too many moves here. Total has moved from 3.5, very juiced, and it's pretty much stayed that way. Got a little bit back. I saw it as low as it's -113. We're now back to -120. I had it initially opening at -123. So looks to me like there's not going to be a ton of threat here to Manchester City. 3-1 on aggregate. Gave a really bad goal. Big mistake from Ederson. That happens to their goalkeeper because he doesn't really do much. And when he does some things and when he's put under pressure, you can have some trouble. Problem here is if you're back in Copenhagen in any sort of way, they need to win by 2 goals to force extra time. Away goals don't matter, so that won't get them through. But they're going to have to score goals, and I don't know how they're going to do that against Manchester City without putting themselves at undue risk or just at risks that are too great because Manchester City scores goals like clockwork on counterattacks, and they score a ton of goals really just because that's a team that is filled with incredible it's basically an all-star team, but they've done a great job building their club, and I think this is going to be a good chance for maybe some backups that are still far better than the Copenhagen assets to go out there very well rested and coming off a pretty big derby match with Manchester United at home. They get another match they get to stay home for, and I think that's big for Manchester City. Now, I backed under in this first leg, and I felt like it was a brutal loss. I think at the death, I want to say in stoppage time was a late goal from, I think, own goal maybe even, or something from Phil Foden long ago, and I try to forget the losses because they hurt way more than wins. But I do think this could be a competitive matchup. And I don't know what the motivation here is for Manchester City to score a million goals. I do think that they're so talented that they will take the opportunities. That does worry me significantly. I think if I had to make a pick on this matchup, I would go with the Copenhagen under 3.5 goals as my biggest interest there. And since I didn't say anything as the ultimate best bet to give you an idea of what I do for that, I guess that other Leipzig match, I guess I sort of did. I pointed to Leipzig getting a goal and under 3, and I like both of them. I'm not sure which one I like more, actually, but I do like Leipzig. I'll go with Leipzig under 3 as my biggest interest in that matchup. Now I'll move on to the 2 advanced numbers. I'll do that end of show. We'll go to the Tuesday, March 12th and Wednesday, March 13th, the next rounds of the Champions League, just to get that out there. I'll be quick on these, I promise, even though, as most of you who've been watching for the 3 or 4 years I've been doing this know I'm not quick about anything, but I'm passionate about it. I like it, and we got people watching right now. So hopefully you are all having great evenings, and we'll get into Barcelona hosting Napoli. It looks like Barca, 3/4 goal favorite at home. Almost all the juice on Napoli. On the road over under here is 2.75. Juice pretty heavily to under. So in terms of where this has moved, looks like Napoli were looks like they were going to head towards a 1-goal underdog. So there's been some money coming in on Napoli. I lean that way, wearing my half Napoli, half Armando Maradona shirt. Figured it was appropriate, even though Napoli, I guess, aren't playing until next Tuesday. But regardless, Barcelona, to me, they've got a lot of flaws. They took a lead against Napoli in Italy, but then Iñigo Martinez, who was supposed to be one of their defensive saviors, or maybe they just have no money, and that was the best budget guy they could afford from Athletic Club. he got turned by Victor Osimhen, and a 1-0 great start for Barcelona. Then all of a sudden is equal, and yes, they're at home, but it's not the same home field environment. So I'm pretty interested in Napoli here getting that 3/4 a goal. Unders are really hot in this competition. It's really hard to play unders with Barcelona and their defense, but I do feel like Napoli, if they score, they'll be very defensive. So, or if score, take a lead, I mean, try to get themselves through. So I expect this is probably not going to be a lot of scoring this round in general. So give me Napoli, and I like under 2 3/4 right now. Napoli plus 3/4 of a goal right now on the side. Moving to the other matchup in that Tuesday Champions League window on the 12th of March, I will be getting ready or maybe flying to Kansas City for the Big 12 championships. So if you're out there as well, look me up. Arsenal at 1 3/4 goal favorite right now at the Porto. Porto with almost all the juice. Over under is 3, just all the way to under. That one has moved a little bit in the Porto direction, a little bit surprising, but Porto a 1 goal underdog, I think, at home in the first leg, got a late winner, and Arsenal have a lot of work to do. Total at 3, very juiced to under. It's about where it's been this whole time. I expect Porto to go into Arsenal and do everything they can to keep Arsenal from scoring as long as possible. Kind of Lazio style, what we expect to talk about in the ultimate best bet portion of the show. As I summarize and give you my ultimate best bet, the one best bet you can grade me all on for the Champions League this week. And I'll go to the Wednesday matches. So Atletico Madrid, a pick'em right now at the Inter Milan. Inter with all the juice. Over under is 2 1/4, juiced almost all the way to over. So that one has been some money coming in steadily on Inter Milan, and I can't blame them because Inter is awesome, and Atletico Madrid have really been struggling. I do think Atleti only down 1-0 on aggregate has a chance to move through here. Just get a goal and then try to make some magic happen with your pretty angry and pretty energetic crowd. Had one fan when I was at the Wanda Metropolitano who thought I was a Liverpool fan and literally like told me to stop videoing them when they scored goals, which I guess I didn't realize was not the right thing to do. But my bad. Took me a second, as everything does in this world. I don't know exactly where I want to go with this one. I'll certainly be waiting to see Inter Milan money hit them to a favorite, even though they have a 1-0 aggregate lead on the road. Would expect a low scoring under 2 1/4 in that one. We might get 2.5 before this kicks off on the 13th of March. The other matchup is Borussia Dortmund hosting PSV Eindhoven. Dortmund, a 1/4 goal favorite at home with all the juice. Over under is 3, all the way juiced to under. We've seen some money coming in, very little on the under there. I'd probably want to make sure I didn't lose 3, so that's probably something I should keep an eye on going forward. But PSV continues to get more respect than I think anyone, or at least certainly than this person talking for the last 33 minutes has ever thought. I think PSV moved from a 1/4 goal underdog at home to a 1/4 goal favorite to Dortmund, and now we're only a 1/4 goal underdog on the road. Looks like this might hit half of a goal, but still, I feel like that's pretty uh complimentary. That's usually free, so that's not the right word, but I think it's respectful of Eindhoven. And Dortmund, I think they've been great in this competition, great in the Champions League, really bad in Germany. Certainly have had an uptick in form domestically lately, but they're also still really pissed. So they took a lead on the road in Eindhoven in Holland and gave up a penalty late that was very controversial, and I think that's going to be something that's on their mind. I think probably my biggest interest, rather than backing an Eindhoven side, which I think are less talented against a really tough crowd, and they actually will be missing their crowd, which I think is even more important. But I think I like under 3 because I expect it to be low scoring. I think PSV Eindhoven will go on the road to defend, and I don't expect a lot of goals in that one. So I'll go through the 2 advanced numbers on this Tuesday matchup because I don't think I have anything for Wednesday of this week. And then you can get to an ultimate best bet portion of the show. Before I get there, if you haven't already joined my Patreon, please go check it out. I think it's worth it for everyone. It's the best spot to get all my leans, write-ups, and everything. Plus, I think there's a lot that you get out there that you might not get other places. Like pretty much every night I'm putting out what I'm interested in. And then you'll see, and if you download the application and turn on notifications, each time I lock something in, you get a buzz or a notification, however you prefer. and that will tell you exactly what I'm doing. So make sure you get the exact same numbers I do. I also want to thank you or congratulate some new subscribers, Brent Hanshin, Eric Kiola, and Sam Ronalds. Thank you for coming in. I really appreciate that. And I'm sure that there will be more coming in because it's March and March Madness is about to be here. It's literally the conference tournaments in college basketball are out, and it's a big, big time for it. And I'm gonna be, I don't even know I'm gonna sleep. I barely sleep as it is, but it's gonna be less going forward. I can promise you all that. But before we get into the ultimate best bets, I'll just go over the two advanced numbers. PSG have moved up an incredible amount. That's what happens when you're 2-0 up after a very successful home leg. They've climbed from an initial minus 175 at open to minus 900. I think they closed minus 200 or 1-2, 2-1 on. Real Sociedad have climbed from plus 140 to 6-1 odds, or plus 600. So basically, PSG has I guess dropped, or depending which direction you want to say, they've become 80.5% more expensive, where Real Sociedad have only become 77% cheaper, or I guess more profitable, the price tag has gotten only 77% higher, which will happen when they have to somehow come back from a 2-0 deficit and with all the problems that Real Sociedad have been having lately. As for the Lazio Bayern Munich, also significant move, actually way bigger. Bayern at one point were minus 1,000 to advance, climbed all the way to minus 1,500, up 33%, but they've now cratered down 308% from minus 1,000 to minus 245. Which, I mean, based on form and what we've seen from Bayern Munich this season, I think it's worth looking at Lazio plus 195, so about 2-1 odds with a slim 1-0 margin going away to Munchen. I mean, that's a really tough scenario, and it's nice that they have the lead. There's a reason why they're a pretty big underdog still, but that's down 207.69 nice percent. So pretty significant move. That's what happens when you are an underdog at home and you get an upset. But I mean, 2-1 odds does not sound so bad for that Lazio side. Okay, so if you're not a member of my Patreon, I already mentioned that, patreon.com/real_G Warner. If you're not subscribed, go make sure you do that on YouTube. Leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. That would be huge as well. And wherever you see this, if you're not following me on Twitter, shame on you. You're missing this live broadcast right now at 11:34 Central Time on Monday, March 4th. And you've missed all the tweets, and I'm sure some people love it. I hope you all haven't muted me, but if you're watching me live, then I guess you had to see it somehow, or you're just searching for these things. So I appreciate that as well. But I think it's probably time to get to the ultimate best bet. I already mentioned all lines I'm quoting courtesy of BetOnline and Sportsbetting.ag, the sister partner sites. I've links in the podcast description on the various platforms where you can get free 50% for your first time deposit at BetOnline and a free 100% match up to $500. So go make sure you grab that for Sportsbetting.ag, basically the same site. I actually took advantage of it myself, so hopefully that hasn't violated any agreements. I don't think I did. But it's been a good run there, and thank you to those companies, or same company, whatever. I don't know how they split them up, but thank you for the support of the podcast for as long as it has been running. So this last portion, the ultimate best bet, can be found at the real_G Warner on Instagram and on YouTube, shorts or reels. So make sure you go subscribe there, follow along, and you get this instead of 40 minutes, you'll get it in 60 seconds, because that is the maximum, the limit. That is all that I am able to do. So let's, I guess it's time to do it. This is the real_G Warner on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and on YouTube. And this is the ultimate best bet for Monday, March 4th, the Champions League knockout edition and the first round of the second legs. So from Tuesday, my favorite bet in the Champions League. And if you're not following me yet on Patreon, do it. Patreon.com/real_G Warner. Best spot to get all my plays, leans, write-ups. And it's March, which means you get a ton of college basketball stuff all in one spot. Patreon.com/real_G Warner. But on Tuesday, my best bet is Lazio getting a goal and a half at Bayern Munich. On Wednesday, I like Leipzig under 3 goals. But the ultimate best bet is Lazio. Goal and a half underdog. I also like under at Bayern, which is an even scarier thing to think about. I just literally looking to be against Bayern Munich until they're finally done with the season. Sides, totals, everything playing against Bayern Munchen's offense. I don't trust their defense, but I think it's going to be in a good position where Lazio plays defense this entire game. Stick Lazio plus 1.5 at Bayern Munchen. And that'll do it for this episode. Thank you for tuning in, especially late night. I will see you all. We just did a college basketball podcast with Big East Ben. We're now recording Mondays and Fridays. So stay tuned and please keep on coming in for I guess till this season ends, which we're gonna have a very, very eventful next week and a half, 2 weeks until March Madness and until we have a bracket, and then things will only turn up from there. I'm looking forward to sleeping in May because that's what Rothstein says.